Today, we're doing a deep dive into a question that, well, it pretty much defines the human experience. What is the point of it all? And our guide is the incredible work of Viktor Frankl. Now, if you've ever thought about what motivates you, you've probably landed on one of two big ideas. There's Freud, who said we're driven by the search for pleasure. Or maybe Alfred Adler, who said it's all about the will to power, status. But Frankl came along and said, no, both of those are just symptoms.
Right.
This deep dive is about the third school of Viennese psychotherapy. And its radical idea is that our deepest, most primary motivation is the will to meaning.
And that's really the core of logotherapy. The logos here means meaning. It's an approach that says the human spirit is a vital part of your well-being.
So it's not just about fixing symptoms.
Not at all. It's about the fact that finding your own personal meaning is, well, it's essential for a healthy mind. So our mission here is to really distill Frankl's framework for you, from his big philosophical ideas right down to the practical techniques he used.
Okay, let's get into the architecture of it all. Frankl built his theory on three foundational pillars, and the first one. It just hits so hard given his life story. It's the freedom of will.
It's the absolute starting point. Frankl argued so strongly against determinism, this idea that we're just a product of our genes or our environment.
That we have no real choice.
Exactly. He insisted that a person can always take a stand on the conditions they face. I mean, even in the concentration camps, he saw that some people who had lost everything still had the freedom to choose their attitude.
That one final inner freedom.
That freedom is the cornerstone of human dignity. It's an incredible insight to come from such a place.
Not just a theory, it's something he lived. It's an experiential truth.
And that flows directly into the second pillar, the will to meaning. This intrinsic drive for a purpose that's separate from just surviving or feeling good. And the third is the meaning of life itself, which he said isn't some general concept. It's unique to you in your situation right now.
There's also a real sense of optimism in how Frankl sees humanity, isn't there? He's saying we aren't just these closed systems trying to find a comfortable balance, which is what a lot of other theories suggest. He talks about self-transcendence.
Self-transcendence is that uniquely human thing where we can rise above our own situation, look beyond ourselves, and reach out to a world that's just filled with meaning.
How do we do that?
Through love, through our conscience, by creating something. We aren't just reacting to things, we're actively reaching out.
And this reaching connects to what he calls the noological dimension. Okay, noological dimension. That sounds a bit academic. How is that different from just being self-aware?
It does sound a bit heavy, I know. But it's more than self-awareness. The nous is Greek for spirit or mind. So it's the spiritual or moral core of being human. It's your ability to reflect, to make moral judgments.
And his point is that you can't just reduce that to biology or psychology.
You can't. And if you try, you miss the point. That's his idea of dimensional ontology. He says to understand a person, you have to see all three dimensions: the biological, the psychological, and the spiritual. Reductionism it flattens the human experience.
Okay, so this is where it gets really paradigm shifting for, I think, a lot of us today. Frankl just directly challenges this deep-seated idea that happiness is the ultimate goal.
He really does. He looks at theories that say we're all just seeking homeostasis, that comfortable, balanced state, and says that's not enough.
It doesn't capture what makes us human.
Right, because if the will to meaning is your primary drive, then things like self-actualization or pleasure or happiness, they're all just secondary effects.
They're byproducts.
They're the byproducts, not the goal.
Which leads to that famous paradox.
Yeah.
The more you aim directly for happiness, the more you miss it.
Exactly. He called it hyperintention. If you fixate on achieving a result, you actually make it impossible. Think about trying to fall asleep. The moment you start trying to sleep,
You're doomed. You'll be up for hours.
it's the same thing. The same mechanism applies to pleasure and happiness.
I think an example would help here. Let's say you're at a crossroads, choosing a career. Path A is easy, high status, comfortable. Path B is a real challenge, long hours, but it's for a cause you believe in.
Choosing path B, that's self-transcendence in action. You're not choosing comfort, you're choosing contribution. And the deep, lasting contentment you get from that, it emerges because you dedicated yourself to something meaningful. You transcended yourself.
Which also suggests that a bit of tension is actually good for us, which again, totally goes against our modern drive for a stress-free life.
Yes, he believed a healthy tension is essential. The tension between who you are and who you could be, or what meaning is calling you to do. It's a sign of a healthy spirit. It fights off what he saw as a huge modern problem: existential boredom.
That feeling of emptiness when all your basic needs are met.
Especially in affluent societies, yes, where material needs are covered but the spiritual ones are just ignored.
So if meaning is about taking on responsibility, then freedom can't just be untethered. It needs a counterpart.
It absolutely has to be balanced. Frankl famously joked that the west coast of the U.S. needed a statue of responsibility to complement the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast.
I like that.
It's this idea that liberty is only meaningful when you pair it with accountability. Freedom without responsibility just leads right back to meaninglessness.
And when that balance fails, that's when we fall into what he called the existential vacuum, this profound sense of emptiness, this abyss experience.
And this is so widespread today, which is what makes his work feel so urgent. He said it comes from two things, really. First, unlike animals, we don't have strong instincts that tell us what to do.
There's no built-in manual for life.
None. And second, the traditions and values that used to give us that direction, well, they've been eroding for a long time, so you're left with no inner compass and no outer map.
The people just do what everyone else is doing, conformity.
Exactly. Or what they're told to do. It's much easier than discovering your own unique meaning.
And this isn't just a philosophical problem, is it? It actually shows up in therapy.
It does. He coined a term for it. Nodenic neurosis. A neurosis that comes from a spiritual or existential problem, not a psychological one. He saw so many patients who weren't struggling with their childhood. They were struggling with the agony of a meaningless life.
So if you treat that with traditional psychoanalysis, you're using the wrong tool for the job.
Completely. You're treating a spiritual ache with a psychological bandage. And he was very critical of modern education, too. He said it often makes the problem worse by teaching a mechanistic view of humanity.
That we're just complex machines.
Right. And if you teach young people that, how can you be surprised when they feel apathetic or disillusioned? He said education has to be about helping people discover meaning.
Okay, before we get to the actual techniques of logotherapy, we have to pause. Because this focus on individual responsibility, it's powerful, but doesn't it risk, blaming someone who's dealing with poverty or systemic injustice for their own lack of meaning?
That is the crucial counterpoint. And other existential thinkers, like Rollo May, would argue that you can't separate the search for meaning from your social context. If you're struggling just to survive because of economic hardship or oppression,
then the freedom to choose your attitude feels like a luxury you can't afford.
it absolutely does. And then you have behaviorists like Skinner, who would just reject the whole premise and say our behavior is shaped by our environment, not some internal quest for meaning. So yes, logotherapy has to acknowledge those real-world pressures.
That said, it does have these very specific practical techniques for tackling these deuterogenic neuroses.
It does. And they're designed to leverage our human capacity for self-detachment and self-transcendence. The first one is called dereflection.
Dereflection.
It's meant to counter two things. Hyper-reflection, which is just excessive self-observation, getting stuck in your own head.
Overthinking everything.
Exactly. And hyper-intention, which is that problem we talked about, trying too hard, which makes you fail.
So someone with social anxiety is hyper-reflecting on everything they say, and it paralyzes them.
Precisely. Dereflection works by redirecting their attention outward, away from the symptom, and toward a meaningful task or another person. It asks, who needs you? Or, what can you contribute right now? You detach from the problem and reattach to a purpose.
And then there's the most famous one, which just sounds so wild, paradoxical intention.
It's wonderfully counterintuitive, isn't it? It's used a lot for phobias and OCD. The patient is encouraged to actually intend to do the thing they're afraid of.
So you lean into the fear.
You lean in hard. Let's say someone has a fear of public speaking and they're terrified they're going to sweat profusely. Instead of trying to stop it, the therapist would tell them to get up there and try to sweat more than anyone has ever sweated before.
You're kidding.
Not at all. You try to show them how much you can sweat. By doing that, by inverting the intention from fear to almost humorous desire, you break the cycle of anxiety. The fear loses its power over you.
You're using humor and self-detachment to get some distance from the symptom.
That's the key. Now, it has its limits. It's not for every patient. You wouldn't use it on someone with, say, psychotic depression, but for many anxiety-based issues, it can be incredibly effective.
So when we pull it all together, what's a big takeaway for you, the listener? It's this radical idea that true contentment doesn't come from chasing happiness.
It comes from focusing on something outside of yourself, through creativity, love, contribution, through self-transcendence. Happiness just It ensues. It follows as a natural consequence. It's not something you can hunt down.
And this perspective gives you a way to deal with the hardest parts of life. Frankl called it the tragic triad: pain, guilt, and death.
These are unavoidable. But logotherapy says even when you face suffering you can't change, you can still find meaning in the attitude you take toward it. Those are the attitudinal values.
It's the idea that suffering isn't just pointless. It can teach you something profound about love or sacrifice. It can build your character.
Absolutely. And he had a beautiful view on the fleeting nature of life. He said that once you've lived a moment, even a difficult one, its meaning is saved. It becomes part of your story forever. Nothing can take that away.
So let's end with a final provocative thought for you to chew on. Frankl was very clear about the line between psychiatry and religion, but he was also deeply open to the idea of faith. He argued that a belief in life's unconditional meaning, whether you find it in God, in humanity, or in your own conscience, is essential for getting through the toughest trials.
He even suggested that the ultimate reason for our suffering might be beyond our comprehension. Like an animal in a lab that can't understand the purpose of the experiment it's in. We may not get to know the why, but to keep believing that there is a meaning, to hold on to that conviction that, he said, is the final and greatest freedom we have.